To the Swiss before our top 8 announcement here at Grand Prix Pittsburgh. Hello and welcome to round 15 of Grand Prix Pittsburgh. This is the last round before our cut to the top 8, and playing for the right to be in that top 8 right now, Robert Beatty playing Black-Green Constrictor, really playing more of an energy version of that deck. He's got Green Belt Rampager and he's got Long Tusk Cub. Christopher O'Brien also playing a green-black deck, and his deck is a little more maybe mid-rangey, looking to go towards the long game. Sylvan Advocate, one of the kind of distinct cards in his list. There you see a Glint Sleeve Siphoner getting taken out by Grasp of Darkness from Chris O'Brien.
Yeah, something I really like about Chris O'Brien's list is, he's not really all in or dipping into the energy plan at all, and he's also not dipping into the delirium plan at all, instead choosing to play the most powerful cards on their own. And that seems to be a really good place to be for this weekend, especially because everybody's playing so much inexpensive spot removal that putting together those synergies is a lot more difficult.
And you said he tops out at Kalidas.
Well, he still has 4 Verger's Gear Hulk because he's not an idiot. But
So there is Rishkar Pima Renegade coming in after the Winding Constrictor from Robert Beatty. There you get a look at Robert. An acoustic punk musician. I'll have to find out more about that in his top 8 if he makes the top 8 and gets to do a player profile. There is Walking Ballista, 3 counters on it. Thank you, Winding Constrictor.
That's pretty big.
And there you get a look at Chris O'Brien from Louisville, Kentucky. Plays with Robert Graves, member of Team Card Hoarder. He was playing on the Pro Tour, was coming here, and they decided to meet up and play some Magic. And both players playing for top 8, he and his friend Robert, both playing for top 8 this round.
And stuff like that happens. Like when one friend is doing well, the other friend often is doing well also. This is a good split here.
Yeah, here you see the power of Pima provides the 5th mana for Chris O'Brien to stick a Verdurous Gear Hulk. Gets his Pima up to 5 and the Gear Hulk up to 6 toughness. That can be difficult for the green-black deck to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, in green-black, the removal spells that you have access to are Fatal Push and Grasp of Darkness for the most part. Most of these lists are not playing any copies of Murder or Ruinous Path anymore.
But we have seen more of that this weekend than we've seen in the past.
Mm-hmm.
We have seen those, but I don't believe either of these decks are running that.
I think Robert Beatty, he's on such an intense energy plan that the only removal he's even playing is 4 copies of Fatal Push.
Yeah, and Blossoming Defense, 3 copies. Maybe that serves as sort of a pseudo-removal spell sometimes for him.
Yeah. Where when we look over at Chris O'Brien's version of the deck, he has a Ruinous Path in his main deck. He has 3 Fatal Push, and he has 3 Grasp of Darkness. So a little more of a diverse and wide removal package here for Chris O'Brien.
So here you see Robert Beatty. He cast a Tune with Ether, got a little extra energy from the Winding Constrictor, and then pushed his Walking Ballista up to 5 by putting a counter on it, getting an extra counter from the Winding Constrictor's ability. Now he's thinking about...
Looks like he might be thinking about using the entirety of this Walking Ballista to deal with Rishka Pima Renegade.
He's like, I don't know if I just want to spend this whole ballista doing that, and decides that he does not want to do that.
Yeah, I think he may have actually misstepped there a bit and thought that
Thought it was still a 3/3?
He thought it was a 3/3 or 4/4, yeah.
And then we see Kalidas, card we were talking about earlier, in hand for Chris O'Brien.
Yeah, Kalidas, an absurdly strong card. Card that we've seen get quite a bit of play even in Modern, where you have access to really good 1-mana removal spells.
So attacks from Chris O'Brien. Follows it up with a Kalidas. And Robert Beatty falls to 9.
Wow.
That's just a big chunk of life, more than half of his life total. There you see Kalidas, Trader of Get.
Yeah, I mean, and with this Verger's Gear Hulk having, the extra counters coming down on turn 4, Chris was really able to just get out of the gates quickly and kind of start taking over this game. Walking Ballista, a really powerful card, especially when your opponent's playing cards like Glint Sleeve Siphoner, but it does not really want to be activated in the earlier turns of the game when you actually still have cards in your hand.
So here's a second copy of Winding Constrictor, a fourth untapped mana for Robert Beatty. He's going to be able to put 3 counters on his Walking Ballista for just 4 mana. Gets it up to an 8/8.
It's an impressive body right there. Suddenly, that thing is scary.
But no attack with it. He has to hold the ground. We know that Christopher Bryant is holding another copy of Verdurous Gear Hulk.
Ooh.
You see it flicking by there.
And that's just terrifying.
And Pima again gives him the mana to cast that Verdurous Gear Hulk. Doesn't have a 5th land that comes into play untapped this turn.
And I think we might just see a 10/10 trample. That's what I would want to do.
So it looks like he's splitting them up between the Verdurous Gear Hulk in play already and the Kalidas.
Yeah, maybe a 9/9 Verger's Gear Hulk and give the Kalidas one+1/+1 counter.
Well, he's got to think about that Ballista and, where he wants to allocate those counters. He doesn't want the Ballista to waste too many counters for him.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to put so much onto the Verger's Gear Hulk, because it has trample already. And if Robert wants to make some sort of play where he's blocking and then shooting things, it's going to be really difficult for him to...
he's going to shoot the Gear Hulk in response. 2 counters are going to go on to Kalidas.
Yeah.
And in for 5. That's going to drop Beatty to 4. And it's going to put Chris O'Brien up to 25. Counters are cheap, though, for Robert Beatty. He can get that Walking Ballista going pretty quickly here.
Yeah, I mean, every 4 mana he has represents 3 damage split up however he wants it. So he can start, sending arc lightnings wherever he wants to. The fact that he can also be, blocking with the Walking Ballista while he's also doing that is pretty impressive. Though it's important to remember that that damage will stay on the Walking Ballista, so he needs to be careful to not shrink it down to a point where it's going to die before he can use all those counters. If it's in post-combat when he's already blocked with it.
So here's Greenbelt Rampager. Card that was a big part of Martin Hughes' top 8 deck from Pro Tour Aether Revolt.
And that was a sweet deck.
Yeah, that deck was really great. Pays the energy. The 3/4 for 1 mana. What a great rate. Gets to stick around. Especially in these decks where you're looking to go, we talked about it. You've talked about it. Paul's talked about it all weekend. The idea that you want to go 1 drop, you want to go 2 drop, and then you want to be able to go 1 and 2 drop possibly on turn 3, or just be able to make 2 plays on turn 3. That card's terrific for this.
Yeah, the ability to play multiple spells in a turn is really important in the early turns of these games, the Black Ring Constrictor Mirrors or the Mardu Vehicles Black Ring Constrictor matchup.
Yeah, I like how that card's designed, so you get to have this really powerful 1-drop, but, almost very challenging to have it stick around on turn 1.
Oh, yeah. Interesting draw step for Chris O'Brien there. I think he drew another Rishkar.
Just give you an idea of what's going on outside of our feature matches in terms of archetype matchups. Top 2 seeds, black-green. Frank Scarron, 3rd seed, black-green. 4-color Copycat in 4th. If you go down to 13th place, Bronson Gervasi playing Mardu. Then A.J. Kerrigan, black-green. And then Robert Graves, 4-color copycat hanging out, and then, just out of the running, a couple of black-green decks. So lots of black-green going on here at the top tables as we head towards our top 8. So in response to Pima, we see Robert Beatty shoot the Verdurous Gearhulk. That was a Pima's legendary, so that was just a spell that gets to put 2 +1/+1 counters.
Just travel preparation,
Yeah.
if you will.
And now we get to start thinking about whittling this down in combat here. Of course, Kalidas is going to make that super tricky. 2 creatures are going to die.
Yeah, Walking Ballista can finish off this Rishkar,
Yeah.
but then Robert still has to deal with a bunch of zombies
Yeah,
and
it's
a
gonna be
Kalidas.
Oh, but he does have Fatal Push.
Yeah, it gave Chris some extra zombies there. Could have used Walking Ballista, turned that on perhaps.
So now Rishkar shows up for Robert Beatty, gets to put 2 counters onto his Walking Ballista and 2 counters onto his Winding Constrictor. And has he stabilized this board?
It doesn't look too bad. I mean, here now he can start activating this Walking Ballista.
Yeah, he
getting
can
2
activate,
counters
get 2 more
every
counters. He
time.
can make that a 5/5 here.
Yeah, and then that's good enough to kill both those zombies on the other side of the table. And
And if he lives through this turn, the extra ability to generate mana from the creatures with +1/+1 counters on it, he actually has 2 activations
turn.
on the board a turn. That's 4 counters
every turn
every
for
turn.
no cards.
Yeah, for no cards on the Walking Ballista. There you see Rishkar Pima at Renegade. That second line, that mana ability, when you get into these long grindy games, that ability to just have your creatures with counters on them tap to add mana and start pumping up that ballista, it really is.
It adds up quick.
It is a ticking clock.
And he's the fact that you get to split the damage up however you want with the Walking Ballista means that any combination of threats really might not be enough. And Kalidas did a lot of work here. It made 2 zombies. It got Chris O'Brien's life total all the way up to 31, and it still might not be good enough simply because of the powerful synergy of Winding Constrictor and Walking Ballista.
Chris O'Brien passes the turn, and there you see Walking Ballista becomes a 5/5. And again, only 7 lands in play. 7 lands in play, but 2 extra mana sources in the form of those 2 creatures. And Robert Beatty is main phase going to kill that Rishkar. Pumps up his Ballista.
And you might be wondering why he's not attacking with the Winding Constrictor, but it's because of the Hissing Quagmire on the other side of the table. He wants to really be able to abuse the fact that he has these extra synergies going right now. He still has 4 mana available to activate his Walking Ballista and get 2 more counters, which will effectively be able to kill the Hissing Quagmire and or a zombie on the upcoming turns.
Now at 8 mana just in general. He just tunes for his 8th land. He's empty-handed, but, in a great
Plenty
spot
to
on
do.
this board.
Yeah.
Still, it looks like 1, maybe 2 cards in hand for Chris O'Brien.
Yeah, now, this is interesting because Robert has been able to stabilize. He's gotten himself to, a board position where he's winning. But if Chris O'Brien can, get up to 8 lands and then just draw a Walking Ballista, he can end the game. And that's something we've talked about a lot this weekend is the reach provided by Walking Ballista for these green-black decks is just absurd.
Yeah, there you see Ballista goes right back up to 4 here.
Yeah. Robert getting closer and closer to the point where he can split 6 damage up however he chooses every single turn.
Well, he's actually going to just No, he's going to play another ballista. Look at this. Plays a 5/5 ballista for 8 mana.
And now, no reason to not attack. You can just take out both the zombies with the 5/5 ballista, send everybody else, and then when the Hissing Quagmire gets activated before it has a chance to block, he can take 2 counters off the 4/4 ballista, take that out, and then suddenly he's taking big chunks out of Chris O'Brien's life total. And it's looking like the turn after next will be enough time to kill his opponent, even if his opponent draws medium-range creatures in the following turns.
And he decides, keeps 2 counters on, diversifies his ballistas. I guess, why do you do it that way?
I don't know. I don't think it's much worse or better than the other way. I like it.
You lose a point of damage on this attack as well.
Yeah, I think it's the same clock, though. There's probably a reason why he's doing it that I don't see right now, and it's probably right.
That was a 9-point attack from Chris O'Brien. And again, remember, he's got 8 mana there. He can just put 2 counters on each ballista. And that's what he does.
Yep.
And that's 9 points of additional damage post-combat. This should be
this is it.
a lethal attack here. If a Hissing Quagmire doesn't get activated, 1 counter from each. Shoots down the Hissing Quagmire. 3, 7.
So it's 13 plus 7, so not quite. It's
Not quite now.
Yeah.
But another blank off the top for Chris O'Brien. And on to game 2. Robert Beatty 1 game away from top 8ing a hometown GP.
Yeah, and things did not look good for Robert Beatty at a point in that game. We really watched him abuse the synergy between Walking Ballista and Winding Constrictor in a way that I haven't seen at all this weekend. We've seen it be good, but that game, Robert was able to just, make that his entire game plan. Both players flooded out a little bit.
But with Rishkar, the flood was really okay for Robert Beatty. And Rishkar really shone for both players, actually. Because remember, Chris O'Brien came out of that gate pretty quickly
with turn 4
Verdur's Gearhulk, thanks to Rishkar. But Fatal Push, big, getting rid of that Kalitas. That was really the key to that game.
Yeah, it was very important.
Chris had stacked a bunch of counters on it, and he's not going to. That's the only removal actually that Robert Beatty's playing in his deck is 4 Fatal Push.
Yeah, post board he gets to bring in a couple Ruinous Path, 3 copies of Grasp of Darkness, and he also has Lifecrafter's Bestiary. And in a matchup like this, where you're really trading card for card a lot, that's a really powerful thing to have access to. Robert was playing 4 copies of Glint Sleeve Siphoner in his main deck. He didn't draw one of them, but those are probably getting cut. I mean,
he played one on turn 2 that got Grasp of Darkness.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, with the ballistas, you just that card doesn't necessarily shine in this matchup.
No, that card could be a lot better in other places where your opponent's actually forced to use a card to get it off the table.
What do things look like for Christopher O'Brien after sideboarding? He has a little bit more main deck removal.
Yeah,
already.
So he's starting with more removal. He has a single copy of Lifecrafter's Bestiary. He has a Liliana the Last Hope, and he can play a 4th copy of Fatal Push and a 4th copy of Grasp post board, so he's going to want both of those. He also has a Ruinous Path and an extra Tireless Tracker, which can be very good in this matchup. It doesn't look like either player is...
Well, we'll see. We'll see what they do in a couple moments. Right now, we're going to check in on Anand Kare, trying to get into his 2nd Grand Prix top 8 in as many stabs at the Grand Prix, just coming off of a top 8 at San Jose. And Zachary Keeney, who's a top 8 at Grand Prix Providence, who's just coming off playing in his first ever Pro Tour as a member of Team Card Hoarder, and he is looking to, lock up another Pro Tour berth here with a win in this matchup. But he's already down a game to the Black-Green Constrictor deck. Zachary Keeney playing the breakout deck from Pro Tour Aether Revolt. He's playing Mardu Vehicles.
Yeah, and this, I think, is the Mardu Vehicles deck that's gone the deepest this weekend. Zach looks to have a good hand. It looks like he's going to have a 3-drop and turn 4 Planeswalker if things work out for him here, and he's on the play. So Nod has his work cut out for him, but there is a third game in store if Zachary is able to close this deal.
And huge for Team Card Hoarder if Zachary can, they were a team with a lot of players with not invited to every Pro Tour this season.
Yeah.
And so they have a lot of work to do if they're going to, sort of be able to play on all 3 Pro Tours. And so any finishes like this are actually going to be essential for a team like them.
Yeah, you really, really need your guys to show up weekend after weekend to get those qualifications just so you can get your team out there and in the mix of stuff at the Pro Tour.
So a Grim Flare hit here from Anand Kare. He's sort of sifting through the top of his deck, trying to figure out what to do.
Pretty exciting to hit with a Grim Flare. I don't think that's happened this weekend.
I don't. It feels like it just has never lived. A lot of times you'll see players go on a heater at Grand Prix, like what we're seeing here from Anand, and it'll be like, oh, I have this great standard deck. I know it really well. I'm going to play my Esper Dragons deck week in and week out. But Anand Kare, this is 2 different formats. Right? It was limited in San Jose.
I more know him as like a limited guy who likes to play sealed deck and draft.
He and I have played in the top 8 and last rounds of many of a PTQ long gone by. So there's a Walking Ballista from Anand. And in comes the Scrounger. And Grim Flare is going to fall to an unlicensed disintegration unless Anand has some answer. You know what? He's going to Fatal Push it in response. He's like, I don't feel like taking 3 damage from the artifact clause on unlicensed disintegration. I'll Fatal Push your Scrounger in response.
Yeah, and that's wise because he knows that the Smarter Vehicles deck is really just trying to get him dead, and then in a longer game he has a pretty big advantage. So he wants to make sure that he preserves that life total a little bit. Getting down to 11 is a little bit precarious in this spot.
Yeah, Rishkar Pima Renegade puts a counter on the Ballista, and down comes Chandra Torch of Defiance, and immediately goes to take out the Ballista. The Ballista's like, okay, well, you're going with me.
Yeah, that's something that's really impressive about Ballista is that it creates such an awkward presence that a lot of the time your opponent's going to trade some really good cards for it.
All right, we'll see if we can get you an update on this match. Meanwhile, let's go back to our feature match between Robert Beatty and Chris O'Brien, which is already underway. Turn 2, Walking Ballista for Chris O'Brien. Again, this is the black-green more energy list on the left. And then, how would we describe Chris O'Brien's list? It's more of a mid-range.
I want to just call it, black-green mid-range. It's mid-range, I think, for the last few years has more meant that your deck has a bunch of 4s and 5s, but this deck is much more mid-range than the other black-green decks we're seeing. It is less controlling than the Delirium versions, more controlling than the Energy versions, and it really just plays a lot of really powerful cards and focuses a lot less on the synergy aspect of the deck because it expected a lot of, I assume because it expected a lot of people to play removal this weekend, like tons of cheap removal, in which case you'd rather just have individually powerful cards.
So Ballista's trade and Rishkar Pima Renegade comes down for Chris O'Brien.
Yeah, and there's Rishkar has been quite good in a lot of spots this weekend, but it has been less impressive than most of the times we saw it on camera last weekend. I think that the amount of spot removal often means that we're just getting a 3/3 for 3 mana that, gives us a little extra mana from our Walking Ballistas and itself.
Here you see Robert Beatty play a Greenbelt Rampager, bounce it, trigger Revolt, and then Fatal Push that Rishkar.
That's a cool interaction there.
Yeah, absolutely. But Liliana, the Last Hope, comes down for O'Brien. Immediately goes up to 4.
And that's a pretty powerful card here in this matchup again because, it generates extra cards. And you're often seeing people trade card for card here. Some people like Liliana, some people like Lifecrafters Bestiary. I think it really depends on what your build of the deck looks like.
Well, we'll get to contrast them head-to-head because I think Robert Beatty has the opportunity to play a Bestiary this turn if he wants. He's going to stick his Greenbelt Rampager. Oh, and you know what? He's going to follow it up with his own Rishkar. And he's got a 4-5 and a 3-3. Just went up to 8 power out of nowhere.
And I like that
mana.
play. I think that a lot of the time when you have these more grindy cards, there's a temptation to get them out on the board as early as possible. And while that may be wise, sometimes it's better to just be as aggressive as you possibly can when your opponent has something like a Planeswalker in play that you need to get off the table.
See Chris O'Brien using the minus ability of Liliana to put a couple cards in his yard and then return the Walking Ballista and then be able to make 2 plays on turn 4. Play Winding Constrictor and a 2/2 Ballista for just 2 mana.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, I'd be very surprised if Robert Beatty didn't just immediately send both of his creatures to the Liliana here. Greenbelt Rampager seems so good to me. That power and toughness is a really nice combination.
It's a 4/5, 3/4 base, but 4/5 now with that +1/+1 counter. Pretty exciting. And he just sends the Rampager at Liliana, and Chris Bryant's like, okay. Kind of invested in keeping this
combination.
This combination of cards around. I think I saw you do some pretty good stuff with it last game.
Yeah.
And now a 3/3 Winding Constrictor. And it's going to trade. Such a weird sequence.
Yeah, I mean, it already had the 2 damage on it, so before it has the opportunity to remove any more counters, it just dies to a state-based effect.
Okay, here's Rishkar. And suddenly, oh, wow. Oh, no.
Yeah. Other
There
way
we
around.
go, other way around. And another Winding Constrictor for Chris O'Brien. So his board is pretty well gummed up.
Yeah, with a pair of Winding Constrictors on the board, there are a lot of cards in your deck that become way more impressive than they would have been otherwise.
So I can give you an update from one of the back tables as we start to take our top 8 starts to take shape. I can tell you that Hunter Cochran, who is on 36 points, defeated Ruben Vallejo on 36 points. So Hunter Cochran goes up to 39. He's 13-2 and should be in the top 8. If not, qualifies for the Pro Tour. With a record good enough to top 8. But that's our first result from our feature match area. So there we see Obnixilis come down. You talked about that mid-range aspect of Chris O'Brien's deck.
Yeah, and that's a pretty impressive card here. Taking out that 4/5. Now it can start drawing Chris extra cards just for the cost of 1 life, and then it ends up picking up more loyalty. That thing can take over a game.
And then it takes out the Nissa that Robert had played with his attack.
And now, or with just a Lonely Plant token in play, going to be forced to activate this land to get the Obnixilis off the table.
Yep. Sends Hissing Quagmire and Rishkar in at the Obnixilis, and then here's another Greenbelt Rampager. It's going to just return to hand. Funny, Robert has had Lifecrafter's Bestiary in his hand since almost the beginning of the game.
Yeah, the thing is,
hasn't had a chance to play it.
Yeah, a lot of the time you're going to get to a point where because you're trading card for card, that card just breaks the game wide open. And we've seen a lot of green-black mirrors end up that way. In this particular game, though, Chris O'Brien has had redundancy. He's had a lot of Winding Constrictors. And as a result, Robert Beatty hasn't really had a chance to use his mana for card advantage. He's needed to do it to stay in the game on board.
So here you see it now. Get a little bit of like a Whispers of the Muse with buyback here.
Yeah.
Plays the Greenbelt Rampager, pays green, draws a card. Can't keep it in play. Doesn't have 2 energy until after it.
Yeah, and this is one of the problems with Robert's version of the deck is, he's only playing 4 Fatal Pushes removal, so if your opponent ends up with one of these really high synergy draws, it's hard for you to have cards to break it up. Your Walking Ballistas have to do a lot more work than they do in other versions of the green-black deck.
Looks like a plant token's just going to jump in the way, and Robert's going to fall to 6. He's able to stick that Greenbelt Rampager now, though. So the 2 energy. He's also got a Grasp of Darkness, so, did go to his sideboard to bring a little extra removal to the table.
It looks like Robert, at least with things as things stand now, will probably have at least another turn, because I believe he kept the card that was on the top of his deck. And if you're still playing the game and you kept the card, you've probably got another turn.
Here comes the Rampager.
Yeah, he may be looking to
He's trying to
chains perfect cards together with Rampager.
Maybe not.
He could also just be looking to, play something huge like a Verder's Gear Hulk.
Wow, he's not sure what he wants to do here. Going back and forth. Decides ultimately to attune with Ether first. Thin his deck out a little, too, if he's going to be planning to draw a card with the Bestiary.
Yeah, and Lifecrafter's Bestiary, and not as exciting as it has been in past games where I've seen it in this matchup. When I played online this week, it was just about the best thing I could do. It's certainly not as good on the draw as Robert was in this game.
So there's Greenbelt Rampager. He's going to pay the 2 energy. It's going to stick. He's going to draw a card. Can he hold off those final 6 points of damage and turn things around, scrying, get it to draw cards every time he plays a creature? We'll see. He does have a removal spell in hand. But a Walking Ballista would be fatal here.
Yeah. Walking Ballista is a good Magic card, especially alongside the Snake.
And the extra mana from Rishkar.
Rishkar representing 2 mana, that Winding Constrictor.
So he can play an 8 mana Winding Constrictor, get 2 counters from the... a Walking Ballista, get two extra counters from the Winding Constrictors, and that would be the that would be the game here.
Yeah.
Chris O'Brien needs to win this game if he wants to force Game 3. So we're going to see a double block on Winding Constrictor here. Rishkar is going to get through, and that's going to drop Robert to 2. Maybe. He has Grasp of Darkness. Takes that out, so he is going to actually do a really good job of whittling down Chris O'Brien's board here.
Yeah, and
he gets to untap, have the Bestiary, and start to really sift through the top of his deck.
And again, he was just looking like he was struggling underneath all of that pressure and the inexpensive nature of his deck. Like, Robert Beatty is as low to the ground as you could possibly be with this strategy, and he has, shown us that he's playing inexpensive cards, he's drawing extra cards to this Bestiary, and now he's at a point in the game where Chris O'Brien is pretty much out of gas.
Look at this. Verder's Gear Hulk, draw a card.
Yeah, that's good.
So now comes the game. You got to think about how you want to allocate your counters. Opponent has a chance to respond. What's your target?
3-1, 2-2.
Going 2-2. They both stick. And in comes the Rampager. Okay. Wow, both times Robert started out the game, he's looked so far behind.
And now he's basically drawing 2 cards a turn for the rest of the game, while also fixing the top of his library.
Chris O'Brien cracks an Evolving Wilds at the end of the turn. No play from him, just more land. Is Robert not remembering his scry there?
I thought he looked at it and then just put it right in his hands.
Oh, okay. Grasp of Darkness takes out the Winding Constrictor. And that's going to be the game. Robert Beatty goes to 13-2. Local product. Plays in town, one of the local game stores. Great job by him. He is going to be most likely in the top 8.
Terrible
shape both games.
Yeah, and just came back and won it. And his deck's so low to the ground, too. It doesn't look like a deck that can recover like that. He just did a beautiful job both times, playing inexpensive cards, getting his opponent to, just order things in a certain way, and beautiful play there from him.
Yeah, making the case for green-black energy in Standard going forward.
Mm-hmm.
Now we pick things up with Anand Kari versus Zachary Keeney. Deep into Game 3 here. Both players, again, playing for a top 8 berth. A couple of Thraben Inspectors and a Scrap Heap Scrounger in play for Zachary Keeney. Walking Ballista with 3 counters. Rishkar Pima Renegade with 2 counters.
I believe that's his graveyard up top.
Yeah. No. There's no Fatal Push in play. So Traverse the Uvenwald for Anande. He's going to go get a swamp.
All of these games today have been so good.
Passes the turn back to Zachary. Zachary's on 9. Not in a great shape as far as blockers go.
Yeah, and using his mana now to sacrifice a clue, that's definitely not where you want to be.
Jams in with the Scrounger.
And it looks like he's in chump block mode with the Thraben Inspector, because that Walking Ballista is going to be lethal otherwise.
Has another Thraben Inspector. And Ballista ticks up to 4 counters at the end of the turn for Anand.
Yeah, now Zachary's going to need to chump block with both of these. Oh, and it's
There's
over.
Dead Weight. There's Murder. And Zachary, he's like, look at all these expensive cards stuck in my hand.
Yeah.
And Anand Kari may very well. We're still going to see how the tiebreakers play out. We're going to see how all the implications. I don't want to promise anything, but looks like he is going to make his 2nd Grand Prix top 8 in the last 3 weekends. The only thing stopping him from having it be 3 weekends in a row is there was no Grand Prix last weekend.
Yeah.
Guy's unstoppable.
I think he's 3rd or 4th seed. I think he, again, no promises. I don't like crazy stuff can happen, but if the math goes as planned, he's 3rd or 4th seed in the top 8. Pretty exciting for him.
So you see some Magic still being played. We'll be back momentarily to bring you some more Magic here as